Do you have constitutional questions? Get constitutional answers. We'll be answering your constitutional questions live, so get ready to call in now. Are you a prosecutor, law enforcement officer, or local government employee? Want to make sure you are executing the laws in a constitutional manner? Are you a city council member, township board member, or state legislator? Want to ensure the laws you pass are constitutional? Perhaps you're a citizen who wants to know the proper limits on government and the protections for your God-given liberties. Regardless of your role, call me, Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, with your constitutional questions during our live call-in show now at the phone number listed on the screen. And remember, together we can restore freedom.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello, everyone. I'm trying to still get into the swing of things here, and apparently I was asleep at the wheel because I'm pressing buttons and then expecting things to just happen on their own. And I forget OBS is a little bit more hands-on than some of the other platforms we were using to stream before, so I apologize about that. Anyway, so let me know if you guys can hear me okay, because last time it was doing something weird and I had to change things up. And I checked the settings on my end, but with OBS, it's just a little bit more clunky for me to see those things. So, all right. So, all right. I guess let me know whether or not you're hearing me. I see you guys saying all hi to each other, which is great. But just give me, okay. Big Bad John says audio okay. Awesome. Okay. All right, a second John says you're good. All right, awesome. So while we're getting warmed up today with today's show, well, let me back up and say to those of you who might just be stumbling across this show on YouTube, or you saw a post on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, Twitter, about this and decided to join, I'm Constitutional Attorney Catherine Henry, and this is Restore Freedom Weekly. And it hasn't been weekly in a while because of life circumstances. Maybe we'll eventually get there, but the need hasn't been as great according to the viewership that we've had. And quite frankly, I have had a lot going on in my personal life, including a battle with cancer. So just kind of easing back into things. In fact, I didn't even get the newsletter out yesterday like I wanted to, so hopefully I will have a chance to do that right after today's show. For those of you who are signed up and still looking forward to seeing things, again, it's not as robust as it used to be. I haven't been doing the Wednesday Way to Get Involved challenges. Only recently started getting back into those Friday freedom fighting tools, and haven't been doing the Restore Freedom goodies on Saturdays and the true or false questions on Tuesdays, things like that. So also, because we haven't been doing a scripted show on Tuesdays, I haven't been doing that Constitution segment recap video on Thursdays. But just trying to go with the flow and see what helps you guys, because I don't want to pour in hours and hours and hours of work into stuff if it's not exactly going to be helping you in your fight for freedom, because that's the whole point, right? So let me just take a peek here, make sure I'm not missing anything. Just a couple other people saying sound looks good and whatnot. So, all right. So as we get started today, I'm going to just throw a topic out there, and then I'll throw up the phone number, you know, for those of you to call in with questions that you have. But one of the, and it's a bummer that it doesn't look like it's working on this end. Okay. So I pinned a comment. It is not going to let me see the whole comment, is it? Okay. I'm new to some of these things that may have been around for quite a while, but especially doing this within the streaming platform, OBS. John Q. Public posted about 20 minutes before we started, President Trump, please, we the people need an executive order acknowledging the Second Amendment preemption and the supremacy clause, national constitutional carry. And he says, thank you, sir. First of all, I was hoping to be able to throw that on the screen, but apparently it's only, I don't know where it's pinning it. If it's just pinning it in the part that I see in behind the scenes in OBS or where it's doing it, but oh, apparently you guys can see it in the chat. So hopefully I don't know what it looks like on your end. Hopefully I'm not messing up the rest of the chat flow there, but at any rate, I thought that was an important concept. And so it made me think of something that's been on my mind and something I've been reading a lot of articles about and seeing a lot of different, litigation and new court cases about, and that's Trump's executive orders. Now, man, I have a lot to say about executive orders. But one thing that you guys probably know about me by now, if you've been around me for a while, or especially if you've been following the work I've been doing, especially the last 5 years now, but it's that executive orders are not themselves law. Executive orders are not law that can be used to regulate the people. But executive orders can be used and should be used to regulate the government. So it's essentially a way that you could set out policy or requirements for how the government is going to function, especially if it's the, say, president telling, I don't know, an executive branch agency, an administrative agency, what to do or how to do it or what not to do. So the topic at hand, I mean, I would absolutely agree that we needed an executive order acknowledging, great wording in this comment here, acknowledging that there's the supremacy clause and we already have the Second Amendment and we have a constitutional right to carry openly or concealed. Every single state gets this wrong because there are far too many laws on the books that try to regulate this basic, simple right that is guaranteed to us, not created for us by the Constitution, but guaranteed to us by the U.S. Constitution. It's protected by the U.S. Constitution. And yet every single government agency in every single jurisdiction has, some of them are way worse than others, right? I mean, the state of Illinois, the city of Chicago, holy cow. I have no desire to really ever go to Illinois if I can avoid it. Same with California. I almost said California. I just don't have any desire to do it. As beautiful as the scenery may be, I have no desire to be in a state, even to visit, where they just throw out the Constitution or let it burn up with their wildfires. So anyway, I just thought it was very interesting to have a comment start us off about these executive orders. So now a lot of these lawsuits against Trump's executive orders are trying to stop things like the executive order to stop the funding of certain, programs. And they're trying to stop the Department of Government Efficiency and what the work that Elon Musk is doing. I'm trying to think of a couple of the other ones. But anyway, you guys get the drift, right? Everything that they're doing to try to cut wasteful government spending and try to reduce the amount of corruption and hopefully eliminate the corruption within our federal government is, they're just trying to attack every single effort that's had there. And so I wanted to talk about some of these things. There's a couple of points that I found interesting is that, when there were some challenges made to executive orders and different actions taken in the Biden administration, or actions taken, say, by the Department of Education or whatever, it's funny how the courts, by and large, would tend to take this step back and go, wait a minute, if it's something that's regulating, not the people, it's regulating, say it's a presidential executive order, and it's regulating an executive branch aspect. It's regulating an agency that is under the executive branch. This is non-justiciable. This is something that the judicial branch can't get involved with, and so therefore we can't stop, the executive branch from handling executive branch affairs. That's what they said by and large when different challenges were made during the Biden administration. Now, all of a sudden, you have these judges Several of them are Obama appointees. But you have these judges that are stepping in, and quite frankly, I don't care if they're Democrat or Republican. They're wrong when they get involved and they say, whoa, 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 the buyout. I saw two different numbers. I'm not sure which one was the typo, but I saw 2.8 million federal government workers and 2.28 million federal government workers. Regardless, it's 2.5 million federal government workers. Yeah, that's a bit too much. And so when they had that buyout offer that was originally, I believe, until February 6th, that they could choose to buy out and essentially quit their job, and then they would get paid until September, I thought that was generous, very generous. Where in the private sector do you have that kind of offer being made to that many people and allow them that much time to find some other sort of work? And they knew it was coming. This is something that they knew was coming. They knew it was a possibility all through, especially through 2024. And certainly after election night, 4 months ago, they knew it was coming. So come on, guys, wake up. You just don't have those opportunities. And yet the courts have gotten involved when the labor unions have filed these lawsuits, and, 22 states attorneys general have, tried to get involved in these lawsuits and say, well, you can't let this happen. You can't offer a buyout. What? So at any rate, you have that aspect. Now they're extending the deadline. So that's right. In that case, they extended the deadline once, and now they've extended it again. And unfortunately, the articles that I saw were very strange, because my news sources that I go to are typically really great about linking the actual court documents, and I can read them, and I usually do. There was no reference to the actual court document, and I didn't have the time to try to dig it out and find what court it was and, read the orders myself. But so I don't know the specifics, other than they have now extended that deadline yet again. And anyway, it's none of the judicial branch's business. If the executive branch is handling matters within the executive branch, right? Employees that work for the executive branch, and they're saying, hey, we're going to offer you a buyout. This isn't a discrimination lawsuit. This is not something where it's like, one small class of people that's being picked on an individual person or a class of persons or, whatever. We have 2.5 million freaking federal government workers that don't need to be on the payroll. We don't need a government so big that millions of people that are in civil service in government jobs. I don't think so. It's one thing if we have a large military, Navy, Army, fine. Right? I'd love to have a strong military. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the civil sector workers, and that is far too many. So at any rate, one of the other things that's going on is the talk of shutting FEMA down, the talk of shutting the Department of Education down. And you have all these people that are trying to file these lawsuits, some preemptively, some wait till a certain executive order comes out, because of course they're continuing to come out because the work is continuing to be done. And you have these judges that are sticking their nose in where it doesn't belong. And instead of going, you know what, I have to raise the same concern I did when the challenges were made to the Biden administration executive orders and say, this is a non-justiciable issue because it's the executive branch handling matters solely within the purview of the executive branch. Well, that's what they should be doing here. He is cleaning house in his own department. And then they were, some judges, I'm of course a part of some newsletters and things, listservs from, that attorneys are. And so one of the things I saw, it was either yesterday or today, was that, a lot of these, judicial and lawyer groups are really, they're sounding the alarm because supposedly Elon Musk and I don't remember who else, maybe JD Vance, somebody else was saying, just totally ignore what the judges are saying, and we're going to keep doing what we're doing, and we're going to freeze the funding that we've said should be frozen, and we're going to, eliminate these jobs, and we're going to do this and do that and eliminate the wasteful spending, and we're going to uncover the corruption. And the judges can't stop us from doing that. And so, some of these judge organizations and attorney groups that are all liberal based, I'm going to tell you that as an insider, they're liberals, and they're standing up going, oh my God, she's saying ignore the judges. Well, you know what? If a judge is wrong, why is a judge above the law? That's what I want to know. Why do they think that the judicial branch is above the law? They're claiming that they get the last say on the law. I don't think so. The executive branch, the legislative branch, the judicial branch, any government worker, when they take their job, they have to stand up and they have to take the oath to defend the U.S. Constitution. So it's not okay to say, well, I'm going to defend the U.S. Constitution as defined by the Supreme Court, or as defined by, in this case, it hasn't even been the Supreme Court, some lowly trial judge somewhere. Who gives a crap what they say in the grand scheme of things if it is blatantly obvious that what the executive agency is doing, what the executive branch is doing, is regulating executive branch agencies? If they're cutting wasteful spending and they're posting about it and they're sharing the information, they're not sharing social security numbers of people. They're sharing the dollar amounts of the corruption. They're sharing the numbers of how many people have signed on to that buyout that Musk offered, things like that. I mean, it is beyond absurd that we have judges going, oh my gosh, how dare he do that? He has to follow the law. Then why the hell are the judges not following the law? And what exactly do they expect the executive branch to do when the judges are not following the law and they're making it up as they go along? Let's bring it back to the basics. The number one law in our country is the United States Constitution, and we have an oath to follow it. We don't have an oath to follow judges and their decisions and their orders when their orders go against the provisions of the United States Constitution. It's as simple as that, people. So, at any rate, when it comes to the ability to, completely dismantle and get rid of FEMA, Department of Education, IRS, any of those, alphabet soup organizations, guess what? If it's within the executive branch has the authority to get rid of them, to dismantle them, to not use them. And quite frankly, anytime the legislative branch, or in this case, Congress, wants to step in and think that they're going to create an executive branch agency, let's just think about that for a minute. There's a separation of powers for a reason. We have Article 1, Article 2, and Article 3 of our United States Constitution for a reason. And there should be no executive agencies made by a legislative body in the first place. But let's be more blunt than that. There should be no agencies made. Agencies where the government is not elected. It is appointed. You have people with vast amounts of power and security clearances and all the rest, and they're not part of the military. It's not a part of national defense. This is just bureaucracy, level after level after level, and it's ridiculous, and they're getting paid millions of dollars, and they have clearances and power beyond anything that an average person like you and I can imagine, and they're untouchable because they're an administrative agency. No, we have a constitutional republic. That means that we, the people, retain the ultimate control and authority, and we elect representatives to do our daily tasks of government, whether that's going to be in the executive branch, the legislative branch. We have elections for a reason, to be able to hold those government officials accountable. You can't have entire agencies where there's no accountability like that. And for once, we finally have a presidency. Now, I'm not saying I agree with everything President Trump is doing. I'm not saying I will agree with everything that President Trump is doing. But if you have a president that is finally trying to put the big boy pants on, took him a second term to do it, put the big boy pants on and actually start cleaning house and thinning out and getting rid of the needless agencies and exposing corruption and at least reduce the spending. It is not the prerogative of the legislative or judicial branches to step in and do anything about that other than wholeheartedly support it because they have an oath to the U.S. Constitution, just the same as the executive branch, just the same as President Trump took. What I also found interesting is that one of the points that is being made, and I can't remember, it was the spending, where the lawsuits, there's a lot of them that are pending against the Trump administration for the executive order that froze the federal spending. And the arguments being made are that, well, it's and you have all these Democrats in Congress that are, spewing from the microphone, oh, well, it's illegal. I feel like it's illegal what he's doing. I don't care what your feelings are. You're a dumbass and you don't know what the law really is. In fact, do you even read it? No, because the head of your party, at least the prior head of your party, said you have to pass a law before you even read what's in it, right? But you're not going to sit there and take the time to read an 1,100-page bill after you pass it either. So let's be honest. You have no idea what the law says. Nor do you know what the Constitution says. But anyway, so they get up there on the microphone and they say, oh, I feel like it's illegal what they're doing. No, and their basis is it's money that's appropriated. So if Congress already appropriated certain money to go to a certain agency, they're saying, well, the president can't just turn that off. No, what he can't do is take that money, to take those funds and turn them and divert them to another task, another project, another organization, another agency, another department, another branch of government. That's what he can't do. Appropriations do not mean you have to spend that money. If a job can be done, in simplest terms, let's say that I have, allotted in my household budget $100 to do a certain task. We have to fix something at the house and it's going to cost me $100. I think it's going to cost $100. I'm hoping it's going to cost less, but we are going to appropriate, we are going to set aside and budget $100 for this task. I'm going to go out there because I'm a conservative and I'm not a dumbass, and I'm going to research and figure out what is the best possible way to get the task done for the cheapest amount of money. So if it's the same, tool, for example, that I need to get the job done, and I can get it at Lowe's for, $60, or I can get it at Home Depot for $95 plus tax, I'm going to go get it at Lowe's for $60, right? Because it's the same damn thing. It's going to do the same task, but it's going to cost me less. Now, I'm not forced to go and spend the full allotted amount because that's what I have budgeted. That's not how it works. And any of these bureaucrats, they all think this, by the way. So I'm sure you'll hear a lot of opposing arguments on this. But I would love to go head to head with somebody on a live televised debate. Maybe I should call up a couple of my friends in the news industry where I've done this in years past, recently with the Biden administration and all that he was doing. But where on earth, where in the Constitution does it say that one branch, say the executive branch, is obligated to spend every single penny on a certain agency that has been appropriated to that agency? If they can get their job done with less money, why would we not get the job done with less money? If they can become more efficient. For example, if our federal tax return is on the Ted Cruz approach and it's a postcard size thing, and it takes far less time to process it, and the Internal Revenue Code, which is one of the books, it's too high on my shelf behind me, you can't see it. But it's one, instead of being this wide of, on like that thin onion skin, like Bible kind of paper, instead of it being that big with font this tiny, it's now, 5-10 pages total. I mean, that would be phenomenal. And why would it take thousands and thousands of workers in the IRS to process those tax returns? It wouldn't, right? So anyway, I had a lot to say there. I'm going to go ahead and unpin this message. Okay, and I want to remind, okay, so we have some people that did have questions. Dang, you guys have had some great conversation. I think Lori's in there, so I'm going to ask Lori, if you haven't done it already, can you throw the example of what it looks like to do question and then the other text? So, all right, don't call me Kate, because Kate's not me. My deceased grandmother called me Kate, and I have one cousin who calls me Kate, and one law school professor who got away with it because I really liked him. But those are the only three people on the planet that have called me Kate, and I've actually answered to it. So, Catherine works. All right, so. Okay, so this wasn't with the question format, but I'd happened to see it, and Sam has been a long time contributor on this channel, so I want to go ahead and answer this. He says, how do you find a lawyer to defend constitutional rights? First of all, most of your rights within the Constitution are not constitutional rights. They are God-given liberties that are constitutionally protected rights. I just want to make that clear. They're not necessarily given to us by the Constitution. They are protected with the Constitution. How do you find a lawyer to defend them? I really don't have the answer for you. You have to trust your gut, because the vast majority of lawyers are not that great. The vast majority of lawyers don't really understand the Constitution, and even constitutional lawyers, let's be honest, we're taught in law school to not really read the Constitution and see how it applies in certain situations. No, we're taught to, okay, yeah, you can read the Constitution on your own time, but let's read this case, and then let's read this other case, and this other case, and this other case. And literally, all of law school is reading cases. I don't know if I still have all my books on the shelf behind me. No, I have some of them though. You guys, it's still a shelf too high for you guys to see, but whether it's family law or civil procedure or criminal law, it's cases. You're reading case after case after case to see how the rules, how the Constitution, how the statutes play out and how they're interpreted. And it's treated as though cases, or case law as they call it, is the final say on everything. And that's the wrong way to look at it, but that's how lawyers are taught in law school across the board. So you have to go into law school with an inherent understanding of the proper functions and roles of government if you're going to come out immediately thereafter knowing what is truly the right way to defend and support constitutional aspects and rights under the Constitution. So even if people are Republican, they're Republican lawyers, they're constitutional lawyers, they probably have their hearts in the right place, but it's the entire mindset that they don't realize has been sabotaged by education, by the education that we're required to have. And we're required to have a liberal arts education, or we're required to have a bachelor's degree in order to go to law school. Now, although there are some people who go and get a hard sciences type of bachelor's degree in chemistry or physics or, something of that nature, biology. The vast majority of people in law school have a liberal arts degree, a general, political science, philosophy, business administration, something along those lines. That, by and large, is the vast majority of people that go into law school. And so keep that in mind, because where do you get those degrees? Well, the vast majority of educational institutions that offer those degrees are, in fact, liberal. And so I was lucky that I did not go to one of those. I didn't realize how lucky at the time, because way back then, I myself was still liberal, because I had no concept of what the Constitution was really all about. And I was raised by liberal women in my family, and hadn't really seen what all the sides were, et cetera, et cetera. So unfortunately, I did not realize how lucky I was at the time. But, even that college campus, I'm sure, has changed, and not for the better, in the, many years, over 20 years since I've graduated. Oh, 20 years since I graduated. 21 years since I've graduated from law school or from college. Anyway, so how do you find a lawyer? I don't know. I wish I had a Staples Easy button for you, because every person I've ever referred constitutional issues to, I've never had somebody call me back and say, hey, it worked out really great. Thank you so much for this referral. The only time somebody was happy with their representation was not so much constitutional issues, but it was when the Null brothers were wrongly arrested in, I believe it was October of 2020. And I was busy fighting the governor in the state of Michigan and writing my last brief to the Michigan Supreme Court, and could not head out to where they were arrested that night. So I called Tom Siver and asked him if he would be willing to go out and see them and see their family, find them and meet with their families and see what's going on and help them. And last I knew that they were thankful that I had connected them with that resource, but it wasn't so much constitutional issues as general criminal law at that point. So, all right. Dang it. Okay, there we go. So I'm just scrolling now to see if we have any that say question in all caps. Okay, is Joe Biden blanket pardon for the time periods but no crime legal? Well, here's the thing. You know what? I'm gonna grab my Black's Law Dictionary. I'll be right back. And I was tempted not to do that because in the meantime, now you guys have seen my awesome Valentine's pants that I'm going to wear to my Zumba class tonight. So, I was trying to hide that with a normal black shirt that you wouldn't know that I had a little Valentine's something going on. All right, so pardon. We're going to look this up because I didn't actually look this up, but I want to be specific. I don't ever want you guys to just take my opinion. I want you guys to have an actual answer that's based on the law. It's based on the Constitution. And oftentimes you can even beat them with their own game and show, actual case precedent and historical ways of looking at it that still get you at the right result, the result of freedom. Pardon. Okay, so the act or instance of officially nullifying punishment or other legal consequences of a crime. A pardon is usually granted by the chief executive of a government. The president has the sole power to issue pardons for the federal offenses, and state governors have the power to issue pardons for state crimes. And I'm sure we can, let's see. Yeah, so I don't see anything in here other than, there's some sub-definitions. Absolute pardon, a pardon that releases the wrongdoer from punishment and restores the offender's civil rights without qualification. So releases the wrongdoer from punishment and restores the offender's civil rights. So that kind of gets to what I was going to talk to you guys about. And it's not so much that, well, okay, it's kind of tied to that there was no specific crime mentioned. Yeah, I would say that has a lot to do with it too. That's a different aspect of it. But really, it's if it's not a case that has been brought, it's a preemptive pardon. It's saying, well, I know that you've had general criminal activity, so I'm just going to wipe your slate clean now, even though we don't know specifically what it was. That's not what a pardon is for. And that's not what that's not what a pardon is. It's not a free pass to commit all crime and get away with it. It is specific. So for example, for Biden to pardon his son for the specific crimes of his gun charges and his, I think it was tax evasion, those are specific federal crimes. And although it's morally abhorrent that he would do that, unfortunately, the way the system is set up, that seems to be a legit use of the pardon. But to say he and his entire family is, and Fauci and all the rest of them, they're just immune from any kind of prosecution for any and all crimes that may or may not have been committed. That's not what a pardon is. A pardon is releasing you from punishment for a certain crime, for a crime, right? So even if you look at the definition that I read initially, an act or an instance of officially nullifying punishment or other legal consequences of a crime. It's an identifiable crime. So if you don't have an identifiable crime, then how can you pardon it? So I would say that's absolutely not legal. It has no bearing on anything. And in fact, all it does is show, it shines the spotlight on those individuals to say, hey, you should be checking these guys out right now. Yep, because they've done something. We just have to figure out exactly what they've done and charge them with the appropriate offenses, for sure. Okay. And I haven't even thrown the phone number on the screen yet. But let me see what other questions we have here. Oops. It just skipped a whole bunch. I'm sorry, guys. I'm trying to look for... I have no idea how far it skipped. Dang it. There was another question in there. Oh, wait. Did I find it again? Okay. Okay, so we have somebody asking about the U.S. Constitution. I'm going to grab the Constitution because I don't have the whole thing memorized. And they're asking about Article 3. So I got to head over there to Article 3. And they're saying the first clause. Well, yeah, we have Section 1. The judicial power. So their question is, does this that I'm about to read, does this give Congress the power to remove lower inferior court judges? So not United States Supreme Court judges, but judges that are below the United States Supreme Court. That's the question. The judicial power of the United States shall be vested in one Supreme Court and in such inferior courts as the Congress may from time to time ordain and establish. The judges, both of the Supreme and inferior courts, shall hold their offices during good behavior, and shall, at stated times, receive for their services a compensation which shall not be diminished during their continuance in office. What's interesting about that is that it doesn't say if they're not on good behavior, how do you get them out? Whether it's a Supreme Court justice or it's a lower court judge, how do you get them out? Because quite frankly, the reading of this leaves it very wide open. The Supreme Court itself, being the highest court, doesn't seem the appropriate place to determine if a Supreme Court judge or justice needs to be removed. There seems to be a conflict of interest there. But it doesn't expressly say that Congress has the ability to remove justices or judges. Now, the only thing that's clear that Congress has the power to do is to establish inferior courts. So, for example, bankruptcy court or any kind of other court that we have. They can establish the kind of court. That does not say that that necessarily means that they can appoint or remove certain judges. But that's, again, we're just looking at Article 3, Section 1, and it's one simple paragraph. So if we continue throughout the the rest of the Constitution. There might be some other answers for us there, but the question being about this particular section of the Constitution, I don't see an answer there. But it is interesting because I had forgotten, quite frankly, that it's also judges of the Supreme Court and of the inferior court that only get to hold their office during good behavior. So very interesting. So hopefully that kind of answered your question. It's the best I could do with that. Let me see here. Dang it. Sorry guys, when I scroll, I have a teeny tiny window, and so I see somebody asked, Chris Milky. I can't read that. It's way too tiny. Anyway, I said question on jurisdiction of the judges. I don't know exactly what you mean by question of jurisdiction about the judges. And as far as I see, Vince was asking, why is Congress immune to FOIA? So let's take a step back and look at what is FOIA. And I don't think that the federal statute is actually called FOIA. I forget exactly what it is. I want to say, oh shoot, I just had it and it left me. I don't think it's called FOIA though, but we have federal statutes that allow for the members of the public to request access to government documents. Now, let's take a step back though, because it's a statute, right? So that means Congress created the law that put into place what you have access to and the procedures for accessing that information. I don't think that's appropriate at all. When I wrote the Restore Freedom Initiative petition in 2020 in the state of Michigan, it was going to amend the Constitution in the state of Michigan for in a variety of ways. And one of the things that it did was expressly spell out that governmental entities had to bolster their websites and put government documents on there. So for example, if you have a city council meeting and you have any kind of documentation like a packet that's sent to the city council members ahead of time, then all of that information has to, according to this constitutional amendment, be put onto the city's website, and it had to be publicly accessible, and it had to be easy to manage. The average Joe had to be able to go on their website and see, find what he was looking for. Same with any kind of commissions or committees, the Planning Commission, a Downtown Development Authority, a Zoning Board of Appeals, all kinds of different entities that are, government agencies. Anything that was not expressly exempted for safety or national security reasons, things of that nature, had to be on the government website in a place that is easily understandable and identifiable. And the reason why I put that in a constitutional amendment, now I had a prior state senator take a look at my constitutional amendment, and he was bad-mouthing it to people. And most of you who watch this channel have heard of this state senator, prior state senator from Michigan. And at one time I considered him a very good friend, and I worked on his campaign for governor. But at any rate, he went and told people, oh, this is a terrible amendment. And one of the things he said as to why was because that provision. And he said, this is basically FOIA, but FOIA is a state statute. It doesn't belong in the state constitution. Well, the problem with FOIA being a state statute and not in the Constitution is that every time you get a new legislature in, right, and it changes the hands from one party to another, or quite frankly, I don't trust either party, then they get in there and they mess it up. And they have lobbyists and interest groups that, are meddling with the people's inherent right to oversee the work that the government is doing on their behalf. So something that's so specific, something that's so inherent to being able to have oversight of our government in a constitutional republic, we should have those kinds of processes and procedures laid out in the Constitution. And in that case, I was talking about the state constitution. And it's really a tragedy that we don't have that kind of thing identified in our US Constitution. But think about it this way, when the Constitution was written, we didn't have websites, right? So I can understand why. But you and with the ability of people to travel from one part of the country to another at the time the Constitution was enacted, I mean, it was not, the average Joe just couldn't easily just go to Washington and check out government documents, and there was no website, there was nothing online, there were, you know what I mean? There just it was a different scenario. So it just wasn't as likely that the average Joe in America would want to access government documents that are at the federal government level. But whether we're talking about city, state, or federal government, there really needs to be something in place that is not so easily changeable. It's just a given that the people have access to their to the workings of the government agencies, unless there is a specific and concrete reason as to why, like I mentioned, national security or something of that nature. So anyway, I got distracted while I was answering your question. I hope that did answer that. Okay, so I think I grabbed that, but what I didn't do, as we are rolling in at 12:45 on this normally 1 hour show, for the first time today, I will put the phone number here, and let me see. There we go. So if you have questions, please give me a call. Call in to the show here at 616-303-0093. And it looks like we had a couple questions come in. So I'm going to start answering these questions unless and until we have somebody call in with questions. Do you know, oh shoot, hold on. I can't pause it while, let's see. Do you know if any of the Federalist Papers contain anything about lower inferior courts? I do not know about that. And quite frankly, I'm not one of those people that's huge on accessing documents like that, because those are not, how do I say this? They're not signed onto by we the people. So, you have the Declaration of Independence that is signed by representatives. You have the U.S. Constitution signed on by the state representatives, the representatives for each state. Those, when you have the people signing on to those documents, those are our source documents. So I'm not the biggest fan of going to look for something in the Federalist Papers or in the Magna Carta or, quite frankly, anything else when it's not a government, it's not a document of we the people in that sense. It doesn't have the authority. It might help explain what they were thinking or the direction they were trying to go. But quite frankly, when it comes to a question on specific authority that a government branch has the ability, whether they have the ability to do something or not, that's not someplace that we should be looking. Okay, so next question. What do you think about states trying to make record requesters vexatious requesters? So, that's interesting, and I'm going to pin that one because I would say that my work, my devotion to fighting the government corruption, I've always been a fighter for the underdog, right? I've been a public defender in 2 different states, and I took that job very seriously. I've been a lawyer guardian ad litem in 2 different states for children in abuse and neglect cases and very ugly divorce and custody cases. I've done a lot of different work in a lot of different realms where I'm fighting for the underdog. So I take that work seriously. But my the first thing that really propelled me into devoting my career to fighting against government corruption and wrongdoing was actually the fault, if you will, of a man named Craig Crabessa in Belding, Michigan, a business owner who he and I came to know each other through the Chamber of Commerce, and I don't remember if he actually served on any other boards with me. I don't think so, but I was a member of the Downtown Development Authority and the Planning Commission and things of that nature, and so I knew of him through that. And right after Emma was born, so she just turned 11 a couple weeks ago, and right after she was born, and I was not doing much, I had taken a pause on my cases, my court cases, my trial work, things like that. I told clients I need, some time to be at home with my daughter. He brought me some documents, and what he brought me was FOIA requests that were, records, government records, and he brought me meeting packets from our city council meetings and started to look into things. And the first thing that was like just caught my eye was how the city manager, Meg Mullendor, she was a brand new city manager to our community at the time. She was attacking this woman, Kim Orlick, who was what many might call a vexatious requester. She requested government documents of everything all the time. She was convinced that the police chief was improperly, raising funds, obtaining funds from doing different kinds of work on the city's dime, and I don't remember all the details, but it was nonstop. And she was a recipient of some sort of government financial assistance, so she would qualify for a waiver of the fees under the Michigan FOIA statute, Freedom of Information Act, for those of you who are not in Michigan and don't necessarily know of it called in that sense. But anyway, she would submit these. And what the I'm losing all my words today. City manager, thank you, city manager Meg Mullendor, what she did, because she didn't like what was being uncovered and the kinds of things that were happening. And the person, it's a small town, right? 5,000 people. So at the time, I don't know who handles it now, but at the time, the person who handled FOIA requests was the city clerk. And she was essentially the assistant for the city manager. There weren't a ton of people working in there. They might have had a couple of part-time people that helped, one or two, but it was essentially this one full-time person who was the city clerk. And she is a sweetheart. I loved working with her. But anyway, so because she worked directly under the city manager knew about these requests. And also, of course, the red flags are being raised when, the police chief, of course, was put on notice when FOIA requests were being made about him and his department and, funding issues and things like that. So anyway, what they did was they didn't like what she was doing, and they dug up an old civil judgment on her, on this so-called vexatious requester. And there was a 10-year-old civil judgment. It was just about to expire. And I don't know if the laws have changed in Michigan, but at least when I was practicing that type of law in Michigan, the law was that a civil judgment, if you go and sue somebody because they owe you money, like a credit card company sues you because you owe them money, that judgment is good on the books for 10 years. Now you can renew it, but if you really don't see any way that you're ever going to collect, most people, most creditors just wouldn't go through the hassle and the cost of renewing that judgment. So at any rate, there was an old almost expired judgment, and it was way up at the bridge. I don't know. I don't remember if it was across the bridge. It was at the bridge anyway, at the Mackinac Bridge. So, hours and hours and hours from Belding. And where she was, right? Where the city was. They went one night and they found an old bench warrant that was a civil bench warrant on this judgment. And they called the law enforcement agency up there and they said, okay, hey, we see that you have this bench warrant. we're going to bring this woman in. We're going to bring her all the way up to the bridge. We're going to bring her to you. And they said, we don't want her. They contacted the credit card company or whoever it was that had the judgment, and they said, we're not going to do anything with this. We haven't been able to collect from her. We're not even renewing the judgment. It's set to expire in like a week. We want nothing to do with this. And so the law enforcement agency said, we're not going to process her. Don't bring her to us. We have nothing to do with this. And Meg, the city manager, got into a police car and went to the scene, it was in the middle of the night. They went to Kim's house, and with the police chief and with some other police officers in the Belding Police Department, and they took her in the middle of the night from her home. She did not have her medications. She did not have her phone. She was not allowed any resources. She wasn't allowed to call anybody. They didn't tell her where she was going at the time. They put her into the back of a police car. They, in handcuffs, arrested her, brought her all the way up to the bridge, and they knew that the receiving agency was not going to process her and would not do anything. They left her up there then. They're like, well, it's your problem. They left her up there with no medication, no phone, no money. Just dropped her off and said, well, it is what it is. They were trying to retaliate against her for what they believed to be her being a vexatious requester with all the FOIA records. So anyway, that's the story that comes to mind, because when I saw that, I was like, I don't know who this woman is, but this is not okay. She might be annoying the crap out of someone, and maybe there's records that she doesn't have the right to have, but she is a member of the general public. She is a United States citizen, and it is her government. The government works for her. And if she has information she wants to have, that's her right. So I started speaking up at meetings, and there's a whole story that goes with that. I'm going to upload eventually a bunch of legal documents, because I ended up the target, and I ended up in federal court over this issue, over this very issue. So at any rate, it is not okay if they try to claim that there are vexatious requesters, because quite frankly, if it's a record that you have no right to get, because let's say it's just easiest example, it's a matter of national security, then all they do is deny it. It doesn't take very long for them to look at it and go, oh, this is a matter of national security, denied, right? But if it's not one of those exempted records and you have the record, you have the right to get that. I don't care if you're submitting one of those each day, 365 days a year for 10 years. You have the right to that information. And if they don't want to have to do the job and the work of bringing all that information, compiling it, scanning it, sending it to you, whatever, then maybe they should already have it on their website. Maybe they should already have it available to the public, so any member of the public has free and ready and instant access to that information, because it is, after all, a record that we the people, any one member of we the people, should be able to access at any time. So if, unfortunately, we have First Amendment auditors and other people that go under different names that are out there making regular Freedom of Information Act requests because they want to keep a watchful eye on what the government is doing, they have the right to do that. And the government does not have the right to give them some label like vexatious requester and try to stop them from doing something. So I feel very strongly about that. Hopefully that answers your question. Oh shoot, I just saw a question and I hate when it does this. There we go. Okay, from Individualist. Attorneys such as Representative Jasmine Crockett from Texas don't seem very smart. Another is Sunny Hostin from the View TV show. I think they are able to pass the bar because they get help. Okay, that's not really a question. And there are a lot of dumb attorneys. I mean, there's a lot of dumb people in every profession, right? There's smart people that work at McDonald's. There's dumb people that work in law firms. I mean, it is what it is. But let's see what the question is. Oops, there we go. Is it theoretically possible for people to pass the bar due to cheating help from the woke establishment? I mean, it is more likely that somebody could pass the bar with cheating than a president could win an election through cheating. Have we ever seen a president win an election through cheating? I mean, you can ask Dominion voting systems if it's possible. I mean, I'm just going to leave you with that. It's just like any other test. Anything else where you're submitting answers like that. Can it be changed? Can it be, modified in some way? Sure. It would have to take wide-scale corruption, or at least people with very high security clearances for that kind of information and that access. But it can happen. Oh, shoot, it just scrolled again. Sorry, guys, if I'm missing some of your questions. Okay, I think I have answered all those questions. I'm really surprised nobody's calling in, because I finally figured out how to have my little earbud in here so I can connect it to my new microphone and do all the rest. I don't have to bother wearing this thing if you guys aren't calling and I don't have to hear you. But at any rate, it's already 1 o'clock. So I'm going to give it just another moment or two to see if we get any questions, and if not, then we'll wind it down. So just some reminders, guys, things like executive orders. They can be a weapon that is, inappropriately used, or like they were in the Biden administration, or, Governor Whitmer's administration, or it can be a functional, appropriate tool, such as a lot of the ones that we're seeing from President Trump. One of them John Q. Public has a question. And I'm not really sure what your question is. I have seen it, and then I lost it, but I don't know, now that I see it again, I don't know exactly how to answer your question. So if you want to give me a call at 616-303-0093, maybe flesh out a little bit more about what your question is, I might be able to answer your question about voir dire. So just, I'm not trying to ignore it. I feel like I'm missing something right now. So feel free to give me a call right now, 616-303-0093, and I'll do my best to get enough information on you that I can answer that question. Back to what we were saying. In the meantime, I don't remember. The executive orders. So just keep that in mind, because, we've been so conditioned to think that whatever the government wants to do, well, hey, the government gets to do it, whatever it wants to do, especially the federal government, right? Good afternoon. This is Catherine. Who am I speaking with? Uh-oh, we lost the call already. Well, if that was you, John Q. Public, hopefully you can give me a call back, or whoever you were. If you still have a constitutional question, please go ahead and give me a call, 616-303-0093. Let's see. Yes, and Seven Cities Kid says, I do have questions. Okay, it looks like, hold on a second. Hello, this is Catherine. Who am I speaking with today? Again, I don't know what's going on here. I do see Seven Cities Kid says, I do have questions, but I'm running around getting ready for work. Thank you for doing this. Hopefully I can call in on the next show. And as of this time, I'm doing, second and fourth Tuesdays of the month at noon Eastern Standard Time. So just kind of throw that in your calendar if you have constitutional questions. The second and fourth Tuesdays of the month at noon to call in with those constitutional questions. And hopefully I'll be able to keep this schedule going. I've had a lot of crazy stuff going on. Quite frankly, I've been really exhausted. Last night I was in bed at 8 o'clock because I don't know if it's just the cancer. I don't know if it's, in theory the cancer was all taken out. Now I've had 3 surgeries and all that fun stuff, but life happens and I got to take care of myself too. But let's see if the phone call... I don't know if this is on my end or not. I've never seen this before. I've had a lot of technical difficulties, but I've been able to answer twice, and I don't know if it's just a disconnection from a cell phone or what's going on there. But the phone number that has called me, yep, it's the same number that has tried calling all 3 times. I don't know if that's you, John Q. Public. Oh, it is you. Okay, it says it keeps disconnecting. Let me see if I can call you. Let me see. Well, at least it's ringing. That's a good sign.
Hello?
Hello, is this John Q. Public?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good.
I
We
don't know why it
finally.
keeps on disconnecting.
Yeah, me neither. And silly me, I didn't even think of calling you, but that's why I have Lori, and she was in the background saying, "Why don't you try to call him?"
Yes,
So,
yes, ma'am.
all right. So,
So my question was having to do with voir dire and jury selection. And when they say that you have a jury of your peers or your peers, do you really have a jury of your peers? And I'm speaking specifically Macomb County Circuit Court when you're in either criminal or civil, because it's such a divided county as far as political concern, Democrat, Republican, blue collar, white collar, so on and so forth. Are you really getting a jury of your peers that reflects the person that you are, politically, financially, sociologically, every facet of your life? Are you really getting a jury of your peers that's really deciding your case?
well, that really depends. It depends on, several factors. So, the biggest factor is, if you have an attorney representing you, are they doing a good job during voir dire? Are they utilizing the procedures and the court rules well enough to be able to narrow down and identify the best possible people to have in the jury pool? And, you know, are there situations where you end up and you might have an excellent attorney, but you still might end up with a jury that's really not of your peers? Yes, but it's also not necessarily meant to be those people that are exactly situated like you. It's meant to be people that are in the same general community, in which, if it's a criminal offense, the same general community in which the supposed crime took place. So it's, it's not a perfect system, but then again, we're here on earth, and these are, man-made government devices, so to speak, so it's nothing's going to be perfect. But generally speaking, you do have a shot of having a good, sampling of a jury of your peers, as long as you have an attorney that can figure out the right kinds of questions to ask, and that you have a judge that doesn't improperly shut down a line of questioning. Did you ever see the show? Let's see, what was it called? I don't know if it was called Dr. Bull or Bull. Um, oh, what is his name? I can't think of what his name is. He played Anthony DiNozzo on NCIS, and then he had this other show called Bull for like 7 years or something. Did you ever see that?
Yeah, I've stopped watching TV for many years now, so I'm a YouTuber and I do live streaming. I'd really just avoided terrestrial television now. It just gets me sick to my stomach to watch any of those shows anymore, so kind of left it. I guess maybe I should tailor the subject. It was
Well,
having to do with the
I'm gonna pause you just for
CCW.
a minute. I'm gonna
I'm sorry.
pause you just for a second, because anytime there's not much that you can gain from TV, right? I agree with you. A
All
lot
right.
of it's garbage. I don't have actual TV. I just have YouTube or whatever, and not, yeah, whatever, the Google TV thing that I don't pay for. That, you just get whatever is on there for free, kind of thing. Anyway, but Bull is, I think I watched it back when it was over the air. But anyway,
Mhm.
it is something that I would suggest that you at least watch a handful of episodes. Pick five, any five, and watch them, because it's interesting. The show is basically about, it's a jury consulting, it's a trial consulting firm. And so, although they do have an attorney on board with their team, the main guy, Dr. Bull, is not an attorney. And they have this whole team of people that study the jurors and know what they can about the jurors. And a lot of the episodes focus on what kinds of questions to ask of the jury, but even what kinds of statements to make during, your opening statement, your closing argument, things like that, and how to monitor jury responses. So for anyone who is, and granted, it's still a TV show, but it gives you things to think about and strategies that some of them you can actually just go ahead and implement. It's gotten me to think about things that I didn't even think about before. That if you're someone that's going to be doing any kind of freedom fighting work where you might find yourself in a courtroom, it's the kind of thing that would actually benefit you. Although it's meant there for entertaining purposes, you could actually gain something out of it that could help you in, future cases. So anyway, that's why I throw that out there.
Okay. Yeah, this was having to do with the CCW case there in Macomb, and I had asked questions about it before, and the trial's coming up pretty soon here before Diana Drzezinski. So it's kind of divided country as county as far, even though we're supposed to be a sanctuary county for Macomb County for Second Amendment, it seems like a lot of people are divided on the issue.
Oh, yes. I mean, people are, it really, in any community, people are divided on that issue. Whether you're in small town Michigan, which by and large are more Republican in nature, or, you know, whether you're in a big city, you have people on both sides of all of these issues. So, and I guess that's the point is in that scenario, it's not, you know, having a divided jury on that isn't the problem. The problem is that those kinds of things shouldn't even be put in front of a jury because it's a legal issue. It's not a factual issue. Juries aren't there to decide legal questions. They're there to decide factual. Did you do something or not?
Mhm.
So, you know, it's a legal question about does this act actually constitute violating a criminal statute? Is this a crime? That's, it sounds like, if I'm understanding what you're talking about, then
Right. That's why I brought up about the Bruin decision before and about the traveling and, you know, how that applies to the historical tradition and the text of the Second Amendment. And, you know, do our laws here in Michigan apply the same as they did in 1791, even though Michigan wasn't even a state until 1837. And we were actually under British rule. Michigan was part of Canada at that time. So we didn't have a historical tradition of firearm regulation in Michigan.
well, and yeah, and so I get that, and those are all points that, again, if you want to use their own tools of case precedent against them, those are things that I would definitely talk about. And motions that, you know, you might lose a motion that's raised initially that you raised before trial, but that doesn't stop you from doing a motion to set aside the judgment or verdict after trial. You know, and perhaps you want to do an interlocutory appeal that's done before, you know, while the case is still pending. Bring it up to, you know, if it's in the district court, that would be an appeal to circuit court. If it's in circuit court, it would be an appeal to the Court of Appeals. Or you could wait till the case is over, depending on what the situation is. As long as you have preserved the issue, you have raised it, brought it to the judge's attention, and the judge has simply ruled against you, then that's preserved, generally speaking, and you can raise it on appeal after the case is done. So there's, you know, different ways to tackle it, but I wouldn't rest solely on the Bruin decision. I would, you know, want to look at other things, but unfortunately, in a lot of situations, judges look at what did the higher courts do? What are the higher courts telling me to do here? Unfortunately, I've seen and literally heard that directly out of the mouths of, you know, my own case with the city of Ormond Beach. That's the magistrate literally said, I read to him what a statute said. It was extremely clear, and he said to me, well, yeah, but do you have any more court cases that talk about this? Why do I need a court case? The statute is what the statute is. Or if it's a constitutional provision, you know, it's, I have this right. I have the right to keep and bear arms. So at any rate, I would just include all of those aspects, whatever tools you have that could be used to put forth that legal argument that, legally speaking, you didn't do anything wrong. It's not about a factual claim. It's a legal defense. I would bring them all up, but, you know, keeping in mind, my preference is always not having to win on, you know, the so-called case law arguments, because judges don't make laws. We're just pretending that they do. So.
Right. I think the most prevalent case that was decided recently by the Supreme Court was Suarez versus Paris, which was out of Pennsylvania, and that's seems to be the primary case that has to do with vehicles. I mean, firearms and vehicles, not necessarily it being concealed carry, but it being just open carry, or you know, when you're traveling from point A to point B in your vehicle, and that's what they covered in that case. And I've been looking at other cases too. They've been in Florida, but mainly this is the big one here in Pennsylvania that took place just recently. Was adjudicated.
Okay. Well, yeah, and it's always good to try to keep up on what cases are coming down. Just as it just kind of gave me a reminder that I want to share with you and as well as other people. You know, it's very overwhelming to keep up on everything that's coming, right? You have court cases that are coming down constantly. You have new statutes that are being passed at the national level and at the local level and at the state level. And there's just always something happening policy wise or law wise to change and to keep informed on. So the best you could do is really narrow down your scope of freedom fighting and figure out, you know, what it is for you, if it's Second Amendment, for somebody else, if it's just, you know, information gathering or First Amendment auditing, that kind of thing. And try to keep up on, you know, as far as court cases go, try to really focus only on the Supreme Court cases, the highest court, and what they're saying about things, and, you know, what statutes are happening and things like that solely on that topic, so it doesn't become overwhelming, and so you can have a chance of trying to keep up on some of these new things. So I hadn't even heard of the case that you're talking about. So you know, it just goes to show I haven't figured out how to narrow down. I read them on everything. I try to read all the cases that come across me, you know, in my attention, as far as whether it's parental rights, whether it's medical freedom, whether it's Second Amendment, whether, you know, whatever it is. I try to read too much probably, and then I still end up missing quite a bit. But well, was I able to answer your question given the context of, you know, the limitations? I unfortunately don't have any Staples Easy buttons to hand out, but did we get everything, you know, talked about or discussed that you wanted to today?
Yes, I guess it just it leaves me in kind of a pickle here because of the way the jury is decided and how they're selected. They may not actually represent in what area you specifically live in, because like I said, Macomb's a divided area. You have a really rural area to the north, and then you have a more of an urban area to the south of Macomb. So having a mixture of the two, it can be kind of daunting to pick the right jurists that are going to represent you as, you know, a member of your peers.
Right. Yeah. No, that is an important consideration. Well, and if that's, you know, the stage you're at, I would really, and again, I guess it could be a crapshoot, because if I say pick 5 episodes and give them a watch, maybe pick ones that don't hammer as heavily on the voir dire aspect, or, you know, focusing so much on that. But really the whole show, I strongly recommend, you know, you giving it a peek before you go into those stages of a case, because it gives you, you know, that look at what goes into it, and how can you ask certain questions without asking questions that might be objected to, if that makes sense. So you might have questions that you really aren't allowed to ask, and I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but there might be some that are deemed inappropriate to ask, and the judge may stop you from asking those questions, but you might find ways to ask around that. Or another thing is, if your questions are too direct and the other side knows what you're trying to do, or knows the kind of person you're trying to identify, they may, you know, if they find, oh, you have found jurors that fit the bill, right? They might use their peremptory challenges on those people, because they feel like they're going to be, you know, if you have been able to identify them as good for you, obviously that would be bad for them. And so if it's that obvious to them, then they may use their peremptory challenges, or get their stricken for some other reason. So that's why sometimes it's good to be able to think outside of the box on, okay, if you want, you know, a certain kind of person on your jury, what kinds of questions can you ask that are not necessarily that obvious to get you to that point? I don't know. So as abstract as all this may seem, that's why I'm suggesting taking a look at that show, and, you know, watch a few episodes, because I think that could really help you with some of that.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Yep. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
All right, guys, I'm going to take a quick look. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and let's see, where's the links? There we go. The donation information, I'm not sure if Lori, if you're able to get the links actually put in the chat, that would be great. But if you would like to support the work that I'm doing, I have, trust me, the most bare bones budget I could possibly have, and it's still going to cost me something like $3,000 this year through the course of the year to keep this up, between trying to send out a newsletter every couple of weeks, trying to get the, just make sure I have the internet and, whatever, all the programming, all the materials I need as something breaks. Hopefully my computer doesn't break. This one I got in 2020, so I guess in computer years that's ancient now, but I'm going to use it as long as I can. And at any rate, every little bit helps. So if you guys are able to donate, whether it's a one-time $5 donation, or 50 or 500 or 5,000, or whether it's a recurring donation, maybe you want to donate $5 a week, or $20 a month, or something like that, please consider doing so. If you go to restorefreedomkh.com/donate, you'll be able to see all different kinds of ways that you can donate. The simpler ones like Cash App obviously don't take any kind of fees, and it's just a straight situation, and just put in there what you want. There's a way that you can leave a comment. If you want it for my Restore Freedom work, you can just put RF or Restore Freedom or whatever, and I'll make sure it goes to the right place. Some people donate, you could see on the website, some people have been donating more for the cancer fight I've been going through, and the medical expenses that are still piling up even from surgery that was in September. But at any rate, every little bit helps. And if you're unable to donate anything financially, please keep us in your prayers. And also, please spread the word. Share a link. Share the information. Share it with people. Tell people about our website. Tell people about the show. Tell people about, any of the resources that I have online, our social media links, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, that kind of thing. YouTube, of course. And make yourself make my website useful to you. So be familiar with restorefreedomkh.com/resources. That's going to be, I'm hoping to have time to get more and more documents on there. I'm unfortunately going through the writing process. I have the Court of Appeals that has now given me 10 days to write yet another full brief. And actually I have two doing the Court of Appeals with a 10-day time limit. So I've been running around like a chicken with my head cut off. As soon as I'm done here, hopefully I'll have time to send out the newsletter, and then right back at this brief, both of them. So eventually I'm going to get the website all caught up and have more information, more legal documents and other things for you guys to look at and be able to utilize in your own fight for freedom. Or quite frankly, a lot of things in there can be used for all kinds of different cases or situations or dealings you have with the government. Let's see. Yes, and the biggest thing, it looks like Danny's thoughts. It's not what one can do, but what we as a group can do collectively, and that's important. I mean, there's truth to that. I would say, when I was starting my fight against Governor Whitmer's campaign of terror in 2020 and shutting down the state and doing everything that she was doing, in many respects, I was alone. I was the only attorney on my team, and I wasn't going to let that stop me, though. I wasn't going to let it stop me before I even had the petition and it had, thousands of volunteers across the state. Before I got to that point, I was alone. It was me, and I was willing to stand up and do something about it. And I sent out emails to every single prosecuting attorney and every single law enforcement agency across the state and said, don't you dare think about enforcing these executive orders, because they are not law and you cannot use them to violate the rights of the people in the state of Michigan. And, that was in May of 2020. And of course, I had been doing other things before and after that. But right after that is when I had a college student knock on my door and say, hey, I'd like to help in some way. And so then I had an intern, and then I had a whole bunch of other volunteers that came after that. But don't be afraid to start with just you. Of course, it is so much easier and better if we are able to work together to fight for freedom. We can restore freedom a lot better when we do it. And the militia had your six. My friends at the militia, I have never turned my back on them, nor will I ever. It doesn't matter what government official wants to try to say they're evil and awful and horrible, and if they're unconstitutionally arrested and persecuted. I've always been the one to stand up and say, we all have our right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And anyway, I do very much appreciate all of my militia friends, various militias across Michigan who stood up there to protect people like me, who spoke at hundreds of events across the state of Michigan in 2020 talking about freedom. So anyway, yes, we do have strength in numbers. And as Lori says in the chat, be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Like I said earlier, hit the share button, tell people all about it. And we do still have Restore Freedom swag, as she mentions. I haven't talked about these in a long time, but we have our Restore Freedom pop sockets. I still use, I mean, this one's been on my phone for almost a year since I replaced my phone the last time, and it works just fine. I love it. We have them on all of our phones, and we have a lot more that I paid money for these because we had a lot of people ordering a ton of stuff by the time that I moved down here. And then once I moved down here, people weren't ordering as much. So help me out and order one of these. It is a functional thing that you can use. And it's just, I just asked you to, the cost that's on there is literally what it cost me. In fact, the way the shipping has gone up, I actually pay a little bit more in shipping than what I've asked you to pay towards it. So it's literally at or even less than my cost for those kinds of things. But anyway, oh, well, if you missed my live, just keep in mind, I see somebody commenting that they're sad they missed most of the live today. They're subbed, but they never see the notifications or whatnot. Just try to keep in mind the second and fourth Tuesday of the month at noon Eastern Standard Time. I'm trying to get back in the swing of things of doing that. I did that through January and trying to continue that for the rest of the months of this year, and we'll see how things go. So just want to make sure that I didn't miss anything else here. So it looks like I answered all the questions. So like I said, and like Lori has said in the chat, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, share, donate if you can, help keep this mission going. This is my full-time job. This is what I do. I homeschool and I fight for freedom. And anything that I could do to answer questions so that those of you all over the country can know how to fight back when the government does wrong and how to defend your constitutionally protected God-given rights. That is what my mission is. And I look forward to working with all of you in a continued fashion going forward and keeping this work going. Because no matter who the president is or who the governor is in each state at any given time, there's always work that needs to be done. All right, guys, thank you so much, and I will see you next time.
Our work to restore freedom would not be possible without support from people just like you. From the various software and hardware needed to the legal research materials, every dollar you can donate helps. Make sure to like and share this video too. And remember to follow and subscribe and click that notification button. Together, we can restore freedom.